In the previous episode, Lin finds his sister's team surrounded by a horde of demons. Like the hero he is, he swooped in and saved the day. After the rescue, Lin decided to guard the entrance so his sister could collect the primordial rune in peace. Fast forward to when they left the dungeon, and everyone was staring in disbelief at the pile of demon corpses. That's right, guys. No one is going to catch our boy slacking, and he is always on that grind. Now, picking up from where we left off, Lin wasn't quite ready to leave. He wanted to stay by Mohan's side during the 10 days. But of course, Mohan had her own plans. She brushed her brother's hair softly, knowing they were about to part ways again, and who knows when the next time they will see each other again. Lin, knowing his sister all too well, decided to let her do her own things. They exchanged a few more words, said their goodbyes, and shortly after, they left the place. Watching them leave, Lin realized it was time for him to leave as well. He glanced at the professionals still waiting in line to enter the dungeon and casually tells them it was all good and they could enter now. Then, with that signature cool guy exit, he turned and disappeared before they could say another word. The onlookers were left in awe, thinking, man, what a legend. Not only did he just hand over that primordial rune for free, but he made slaying demons and dragons look like a casual afternoon walk. Judging by how smoothly he handled everything, who knows his real body counts. Meanwhile, deep in the abyss, in a grand castle, the succubus queen lounged on her throne. Poor Alice was kneeling before her, trembling as she confessed her failure again, ready to be punished. But to Alice's surprise, the queen wasn't mad. She knew Lin's power had far exceeded expectations. What mattered now was if Alice had done what she told her to do. With a shaky breath, Alice looked up and nodded, while saying she had left a mark on Lin. The queen's lips curled into a satisfied smile. She snapped her fingers, then summoned the abyssal fire. A fiery vortex swirled in front of her, and from its depths, another succubus emerged. The new succubus, Mina, stepped forward, bowing gracefully before the succubus queen. "My queen," she said, "what is your order?" The queen gives her a task, which is heading over to the eternal trial grounds, following the mark Alice had left on Lin, and bringing him back. Mina gave a simple nod, like the task was no big deal, and left the castle. But behind her, Alice was still trembling on the ground, looking very shocked. She believed that sending someone as powerful as Lady Mina to deal with Lin might be overkill. The queen's gaze turned icy as she stared Alice down, asking Alice if she was questioning her judgment. Alice panicked, her head hitting the floor repeatedly as she swore she wouldn't dare. But the queen was no longer in the mood to see her. Before she could apologize further, a gust of wind blasted her across the room. As Alice flew out of the castle, the last thing she heard was the queen telling her to never doubt her decisions. As the scene shifts to Lin again, several days have passed. He'd made some solid progress, looting, leveling up, and slaying everything in his path. The only thing left was the elusive dragon dungeon, but that thing could pop up anywhere, so he'd been multitasking, leveling up while keeping an eye out. He hadn't run into many demons or dragons lately, but found plenty of mobs. So he wasn't really complaining, since several days of grind pushed him up to level 33. At the same time, his divinity rose with it, giving him some juicy extra stats. Still, Lin noticed something troubling. His level 33 gold-tier skeletal warriors and mages were starting to feel underpowered, especially when it came to the tougher monsters in the core area. Perhaps their stats are starting to fall behind. Right when he was considering his next move, a piercing screech echoed from the sky. A massive eagle-like creature dive-bombed him, its sharp beak slamming into his skeletal armor. The first strike missed its mark, and the giant bird swooped back into the air, circling for another go. Lin quickly used his detection skill and got the details. It was a level 56 battlefield eagle with crazy high stats, ridiculous speed, and a nasty ability. Its dive attacks got more powerful the longer the dive. This was exactly why Lin had started feeling like his skeletons weren't cutting it anymore. Even the regular monsters in this area had stats pushing 200,000. The eagle wasn't done yet. It circled in the sky, preparing for another dive. This time, though, Lin was ready. As soon as the eagle swooped into his range, he hit it with a slowing curse. The sudden drop in speed threw the giant bird off balance, and with a blast of soul flames, it plummeted to the ground. Before the eagle could recover, Lin's skeleton army had already swarmed around it. Now, while the individual skeletons weren't exactly powerhouses, their real strength lay in numbers. Anyway, in no time, the system announced, defeated a level 56 battlefield eagle, gaining 1.68 million experience. Not bad at all. As a bonus, Lin also received a starlight shard. He inspected it and found out it contained the power of ancient starlight and could be used by alchemists and blacksmiths to enhance equipment. Interesting, Lin thought, gazing at the crystal in his hand. It's been weeks since he entered this place, and this was the first time ever dropping a material. Either way, after he stored it in his storage space, he went and checked on the corpse. But when he looked back at the eagle, there was no corpse. Instead, it had dissolved into thousands of tiny starlights that floated back into the sky. Well, there goes his plan to lure monsters in and farm them with corpse explosion. Shaking his head, he'd have to rethink his strategy. Not long after, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. From the forest ahead, a stampede of creatures suddenly came charging out. Lin quickly used his detection skill and got their stats. A herd of battlefield ironclads, each with nearly 200,000 attributes, and there were a lot of them. The creatures barreled forward like living tanks, but surprisingly, his skeletons managed to dodge out of their way. What really caught Lin off guard was that these creatures didn't seem to be targeting him. Instead, they crashed through the other side of the forest, stampeding off in the opposite direction. He wondered what caused them to act this weird. They looked like they were running for their lives. Lin thought as he watched the ironclads stampede through the forest. But from what? Just as that question crossed his mind, the ground shook again. Lin turned, and there it was. An enormous beast with the body of a turtle but a giant snake's head. The moment the monster spotted Lin, it attacked without hesitation. Lin reacted quickly, summoning his undead general. With a wave of the scepter, a legion enhancement buff was cast, and his skeletal army braced for battle. The massive creature didn't waste any time. It leaped into the air and came crashing down with a thunderous force. The ground split apart beneath it, and in a single round, Lin lost 7 of his skeletal warriors, and many were injured by the impact. The undead general immediately started healing, while Lin cast another slowing curse to try and control the monster. But it wasn't that simple. Even wrapped in shackles, the creature's speed didn't drop. It leaped again, aiming directly for Lin this time. The monster's attack was brutal. Lin's skeletal armor shattered on impact. He didn't have much time to think and quickly reapplied his armor. This thing had insane attack power and was almost impossible to pin down. Is this what a core zone boss feels like? He wondered. Just as Lin was strategizing his next move, the sky went dark. But wait a second. It was not the sky that turned dark. Turned out, it was the monster's massive snake tail whipped through the air and struck him before he could dodge. He was sent flying, and his skeletal armor shattered once again. Heart pounding, he hurriedly recast his skeletal armor, realizing just how terrifying this monster really was. Well, looks like our boy is finally getting some serious competition. He steadied himself, taking a deep breath. All right, things are about to get interesting. Spotting an opening, Lin fired off soul flames. The monster screeched in pain, and Lin knew this was his chance. He activated mighty soldiers, and in an instant, his skeleton army surged forward. The skeletal warriors unleashed their rampage strikes, while the mages relentlessly cast their spells. The mighty soldier buff only lasted 30 seconds, but that was more than enough to finish off the boss. At least that's what Lin thought. Within seconds, his army went all out, hammering the beast with everything they had. Victory was just within reach. Just as Lin thought victory was near, the snake-headed beast suddenly slammed its head into the ground, scattering nearby skeletons like rag dolls. Was it dead? He wondered. But no, it wasn't dead. In fact, the monster had pulled its head, tail, and limbs into its shell, activating a skill called turtling. Its body started glowing faintly, forming a protective barrier that Lin's skeletons couldn't even get close to. To make things worse, the faint glow was healing the creature right before his eyes. From above, little bits of starlight were floating down, landing on the beast, and speeding up its recovery. Oh great, it's healing itself. His army still had a few precious seconds left of the mighty soldier buff, but none of their attacks could break through the barrier. Fortunately, Lin wasn't out of tricks yet. He had one ace up his sleeve, none other than our old friend Soul-Devouring Insect King, who has the ability to ignore all defenses. Just as he summoned his scythe, ready to use soul summoning, a shadow zipped across the sky. The shadow didn't attack Lin. Instead, it grabbed the beast's shell and flew off. The wind caused the skeletons to fly in every direction. While covering his eyes, he tried to check what the hell was that thing, but it happened too fast, and he wondered if it was another boss. He barely had time to react before something massive crashed down in front of him, creating a giant crater in the ground. When the dust settled, Lin cautiously approached and looked into the pit. His heart skipped a beat. This was the turtle boss he was fighting a moment ago. Not only it was dead, but it had actually been eaten. All that was left was the turtle shell. Seconds later, it began radiating starlight as it drifted into the sky and disappeared. Then, with a soft clink, a shield dropped from the remains. Lin picked it up and inspected its stats. It's a platinum tier equipment specifically for knights, called the Turtle Shell Shield. It comes with an increase of 3,000 to all attributes, also comes with a 90% boost to knight defense skills, and a 20% reduction to both physical and elemental damage. But the real kicker was its unique skill, turtling, which is 30 seconds of total damage immunity, full health recovery, and a reset of all skill cooldowns. Though you couldn't move while it was active, Lin couldn't help but smile. Now this is what you call an endgame piece of gear. He stashed it away in his storage space, marveling at his luck. Not a bad day at all. Lin couldn't help but reflect on how powerful the core zone's bosses were. Who would have thought they'd be this strong? And that shadow from earlier, just what the hell was it? Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we shift our focus to the Galen Guild's elite raid party. Leading the charge was a level 60 holy knight, walking confidently at the front. Beside her was a seemingly gentle girl, but appearances were deceiving. She was a level 55 master collector, wielding a massive hammer on her shoulders. The group looked pretty relaxed as they trekked along. The girl glanced at the knight captain and asked, "Are they really going to enter the core area?" The knight captain laughed and teased, asking her if she was scared now. The girl grinned, saying not a chance, since she has her beloved captain leading the way and all these powerful teammates backing her up. Thus, she got nothing to worry about. The captain, brimming with confidence, agreed, saying that's exactly right, and she didn't believe the core zone is really that dangerous. They got the perfect team composition, and everyone is well geared. Not to mention they just took down that level 55 boss without breaking a sweat. Even if they run into a level 60 boss, it won't be a big deal. But despite her confidence, she wasn't careless. They knew the core area could throw surprises at them. The female captain led the way, drawing her sword and shield, signaling her team to stay on high alert. With that, the group continued their advance into the core area.